Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today back working on the Diresta Bandsaw restoration, and got a little interesting problem that we've got to work through in order to pour the Babbitt bearings for the bottom shaft on this saw. And I've been thinking about it for a couple of days and just trying to come up with a good solution. I think I've got a good solution for it, but to do it, we're going to have to make a little fixture or a little jig, whatever you want to call it, to really help in the process of pouring those bearings. So I've got a new shaft that goes on the bottom wheel on this saw, and we've completely made a new one. We need to re-pour the bearings. We melted out the old bearings when we were working on the saw, and we need to basically custom pour a new set of bearings that perfectly fit this shaft and have it properly aligned and all of that good stuff. So here's the challenge. On that bottom wheel, it's very important that that wheel run true to the saw, be level with the saw. So, you know, there's machine surfaces on that saw that are kind of the plane that the saw operates in, the plane that the table will sit in. And you want this shaft to be on that same plane as the table is on, so that the wheel is running perpendicular, perfectly perpendicular to it. It's not canted in or canted out, because that's going to have a big impact on how the blade's going to run, and it's just going to cause a mess if it's not perfectly aligned. So let's go over and show you on the saw what the challenge is, and then we're going to talk about my solution to the problem, and then we're going to make those little jigs and fixtures that we need to pour the Babbitt bearings. So this is where this shaft is going to live at. It's going to actually go across this area here, which will hold the bottom half of the Babbitt bearings that will support this shaft. And again, it's very important that this shaft be in the proper position so that it's in proper alignment with the table. Now, fortunately, when they did all the machining on this, you've got some surfaces on here. This is the surface where the table mounts. Actually, there's a little block that goes in here, but still the table mounts. You got this up here, and you got these surfaces down here that were all machined at the same time and in the same plane. So we've got a good reference surface here that we can work off of, that this shaft needs to be perpendicular to, needs to be level to. Now, when we pour the bearings, the Babbitt bearings, it's not like we just drop the shaft in here like it's sitting right now and pour it around there, because it's actually sitting on the bottom of this shell. And we want this thing to be actually suspended. We really want the center of the shaft to be roughly at the height of this top piece here, so that you have half of the bearing in the bottom and half of the bearing in the top. Truthfully, you want it just ever so slightly above center, so because there's going to be some spacers in between here. Anyway, not a big deal. So to solve this problem, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some little rings that we're going to machine that will be, they're going to be made out of steel. We're going to bore them so that it's the same size as this, and they'll slide right over this shaft. And I've done this with other bearings, and in a lot of cases when I'm pouring about bearings, I'll machine a ring like that, and I'll machine a little step in it so that it sits in the bottom of the shell to support it. But in this situation, because this bearing is not adjustable, I want to make sure that we position it in line here so that it's at the same height on both sides relative to this machine surface. So a little bit different practice. What I'm going to do is we're going to actually machine out a little shelf that will sit on top of this and then drop down the front to hold it from the bottom and go in there. I'll show you a little drawing of what I've got envisioned here in just a minute. But I think that's going to be the best thing. It'll support everything. It'll hold the shaft in place. And at the same time, when I'm pouring these Babbitt bearings, because that ring's going to go all the way around this, it will actually dam the ends of this thing up and prevent the Babbitt from running out. You know, normally when you're pouring Babbitt bearings, you have to use some type of damming materials, putty type materials, because if we just pour this in here and this shaft is suspended, the Babbitt's just going to run right out the end. We'll have that piece that fits up against it that will help to dam it in there and keep our Babbitt contained. So that is the game plan. Let's go over here. I'll show you a quick sketch of what we're going to make, and we'll get over to the lathe and the milling machine and get these little fixtures knocked out so that we can pour these bearings and get this shaft properly aligned. So here we go. Here's our shaft. This is kind of a sketch of what we're going to make. It's not to scale, it's just to give you an idea of what we're going to make. And then this is the piece of material we're going to use. The outside diameter on this is 3 inches. The shaft size is 2.1875. So the outside diameter is going to be a little bit larger than the inside diameter, and that's going to be exactly what we need. And it's just we're going to bore this out where it has that inside diameter like we need. The outside we're just going to leave like it is. It doesn't even need to be machined. It's not a surface that's going to matter on anything. I know this shows this being pretty wide. It's actually only going to be, I'm going to make 2 of these out of this 1 block. So the whole thing's only going to be about, 1.5 inches wide, each one of them. And then we'll machine that step in there, probably have about a 1/2 inch on this side and, probably about 1 inch roughly on that step. And yeah, and then that whole, basically what'll happen is the shaft will be inside of this, will be supported, and then this little shelf will sit on that ledge, and it will position the shaft relative to that machine surface that we have to work off of, so that the shaft will, in essence, be perpendicular to everything that we need. All right, I got my blank of metal over here in the metal lathe. I will note that we've already got a hole started through here, and this is a piece that I've been reusing. It's just a drop off of it. I'd used this piece for another project in the past, and I'll tell you, it was a smaller hole that was drilled through this. It was not in the center. I used this for another project a while back. This part is bored. It's bored about halfway through, but it didn't go all the way through. I'm going to probably start by just drilling this thing out. It's probably going to be off center. We will bore it to final size once we get there, but right now my goal is just to get this thing, get as much material out of there as we possibly can. I'm going to start by facing this side, and then we'll get a couple drill bits and start drilling that thing out. I got a little run out on that cut, no big deal. Go ahead and turn it out. All right, we've got a 1-inch drill bit on here, which is smaller than that first part. But again, I know for a fact that it's not all the way through, so we're going to go ahead and run this in. And yes, we are getting some wobble. I'm not worried about it right now. Somebody told me the other day they want to know more about my speeds and feeds. We're running at, 273 RPMs. I looked up on a chart for a 1-inch drill bit in steel that recommended about 300 RPMs, and that's about as close as I've got on my speed range, so that's what we're using. All right, I'm gonna go grab another drill bit. We'll go up in size, and again, we're just gonna keep pulling some material out until we get up to probably about 2 inches, and then we'll bore it the rest of the way. All right, we're going up to 1.5 inch drill bit now, and I did slow the lathe down a little bit. My drill chart suggests 204 RPMs. My lathe has actually got a 205, so I'm going 1 RPM faster than is really recommended, but I think we'll be all right. I'm gonna start kind of slow and see if I can get it drilling somewhat true. Once that bit starts, it'll kind of follow through. Got a little wobble in there, but I think we'll be fine. A little cutting oil in there. All right, we are through. Let's go up to our next size. All right, we're up to a 2-inch drill bit, and my drill chart said, I think, 159. The closest I've got is 129. So that's the speed I've got it going, and once we get this 2-inch size out, I think we'll go to the boring bar and do the rest there. So again, a little wobble, but again, we should have plenty to clean up with the boring bar. So I'm not too worried about that. And there we go, we are through. Go ahead and get that drill bit out of there, and we'll get that set up to start boring. All right, I've got the largest boring bar that will fit up through that hole that I've got, and again, speeds and feeds, we're at 720 RPMs and an 8 thousandths per revolution feed. A little bit coarse on the feed. I may slow it down when we get down to the final sizes. Right now, I just want to rough out some there. So I'm just going to do a little cleaning pass here. Try to get a good clean bore all the way through. I think that's doing that. We can get a measurement on that and then start working toward our final goal of 2 3/16 inch. This boring bar is going to clean up any wobble that was inside of that hole from the drill bits, from where that original hole was not drilled exactly down the center. So again, wasn't worried about it a while ago because I knew we were going to clean it up here. All right, let's get that out of there. I'm just going to use a bore micrometer to stick up in here and see where we are at. We are at 2 inches 13 thousandths. I'm gonna put that in my digital readout. 2.013. Enter. And I should be able to keep track of where we're at using the digital readout. I'm gonna go ahead and we're just gonna dial in 100 thou, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and let it cut that out. Just verify my measurement here. And we're at just a couple of tenths over 2.113. So that's exactly what I dialed in on my dial, so that's good. All right, we got, what is that, about 35, 40 thousandths to go. So we'll take about half of that and then do a cleanup pass, which is about half of the distance between what we had on the last one and where we want to end up. .1875, and we'll let that one go, and we'll test the fit. It needs to be probably just at least a little bit oversized for that shaft to fit through there, but we'll do a test fit with the actual shaft and make a necessary adjustment if necessary. All right, let's see what we got here. Look at there. That's gonna be perfect. Slides right up on there. Don't think the Babbitt will run into it. I think we're good. All right, we need to cut that in half. All right, now we're gonna part this thing off. I've got a parting tool set up in here. I got it's set roughly in half. This is not a critical measurement on the length of these things at all. It doesn't really matter. What's important is the inside bore fit that shaft good. Notice I've got just a piece of stock and a chuck here. That's just to catch that ring when it falls off. And we'll come in here and part it in half. There we go. So I'm set up over here on my horizontal milling machine to mill these notches in here. And why the horizontal mill? honestly, just because I like this machine. Okay, I could just have easily done this on the vertical mill, but we are going to be taking some fairly heavy milling here, and this heavier machine is probably a little more suited for that. And but honestly, I'm playing, guys. I'll just be honest with you. I like this machine, and I'm trying out a few things that I've never used before. One of which being this big Wilton vise that I picked up back last fall at ARNFest. This is I think what, a 9-inch vise, 10-inch vise maybe. It's the biggest one. It's marked Wilton. It's really made by Kurt. They bought these and rebranded them, but this is the biggest vise they made, and hadn't had a chance to use it, and I thought this would be a good opportunity. I like the fact that I'm using a big heavy vise here because I got to really grip this thing strong, and I can get a lot more clamping force with this vise than I can with a normal Kurt style vise. So I've got a big end mill in here. Had to stick out pretty far to get clearance on this front of this vise. I mean, I probably could have moved it back a notch and used a little bit shorter end mill, but I think we're going to be fine there. It's a brand spanking new end mill, Niagara end mill that I've got here, so it ought to do a good job cutting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to touch off on the top of this, and we're going to move the table up 1.5 inches, not 150 thousandths, but 1.5 inches. This is about 3 inches in diameter. It's just a tad over 3 inches, and I want to be just a little under that anyway. So if I move up 1.5 inches, I should be just right where I want to be. And I'm going to do these one at a time. So somebody's going to ask, why did I not put both of them in here together and just do it all in one pass? The reason is that while the thicknesses of these two are pretty darn close to one another, it's not a critical measurement, so I was not trying to, get them to with a thou or two. So if I were to clamp both of them in here, one of them's going to be tighter in the vise than the other, and one of them could rip out. So that's my reasoning there. I'll probably just use a dial down here. I've got a dial indicator up here to help me on my depth, just to kind of make sure I'm where I think I am. But we'll probably just use some measurements off the dial to dial in that 150 thousandths depth. And with that, I think we're ready to go. My speed on the cutter is 778 RPMs. I looked up the speed for an 1.5 inch diameter cutter, and it was 800 RPMs is what was recommended. So we're going close to that, 778. My feed that I've got set up on right now is 13.5 inches per minute. According to my calculations with this cutter, this number of flutes, this RPMs, I should be able to go up to 30 inches per minute. So this is about a little less than half of the recommended. I'm not in a rush, guys. If this was a production job and we were trying to crank out as many parts as we could, we'd probably play with those feeds and just get them where it was cutting as fast as it possibly could. But for the amount of time I'm going to save doing that, it's just not worth it in this effort. And I really like to kind of sneak up on those when I'm really doing that kind of work. So let's fire our machine up. You can see the speed there running pretty fast. And what I'm going to do is, let's see, I need to come this way just a little bit. All right, looks like it's just barely touching right there. And bring my table out. We'll stop it. All right, so on this crank down here, moving the table up, one full revolution is 100 thousandths of an inch. I'm just going to go 100 thousandths. And we're going to try that for our first pass. And all right, let's see what she does. I'm going to slow my feed rate down a little bit. We are getting a little bit of vibration in there, Probably just the length of that cutter sticking out. But we're going to probably just go with it like it is. All right, let's dial in another 100 thousandths. I'm going to slow my feed rate down again. Not real crazy about that chatter, but it's cutting fine, I think. We're just going to go with it, see if we can get this done. I may go to a different setup on the other one, just playing around, like I said, more than anything else. Let's dial in another 100 thou. And this should be my final cut here. 1 inch, 500 thousandths, inch and a half. I've got my shaft supports all ready to go here. You can see they both turned out just fine. I'm going to kind of roll this down in here, and as you can see, they're catching on this lip right here, supporting the shaft from the bottom, and this should be on the same plane as this top surface now, which is the same plane that we've got on our tables and everything else. So I think this is going to be exactly what we need. The only thing I will say is I wish that I had had just a little bit larger piece of material to make this out of. This was 3 inch, some 3 1/4, 3 1/2 would have been a little bit better. It's not going to completely stop up the bottom down here when I pour it, but we can put damming material down there. That's not bad. I think it will completely cover that side. But this side's a little bit wider, so I don't have as much sitting on it, but it's going to work fine. It's perfectly fine. Like I said, I looked for some larger stock. I just didn't have it. But this is going to be just fine. We will use that to set up for our pour. We'll pour our Babbitt in there, and the world should be good to go. So the Babbitt pour is going to be in another video coming down the road, but I think we are now ready to do that as soon as we get a couple other things lined up. So Babbitt pour coming soon. Just another view, looking kind of at the bottom. These are the little steps that will sit on those shelves and line everything up. Going to be perfect for this application. Well, there we go. I think that is going to be a wrap on this particular episode. You know, sometimes when you're working on a project like Babbitt bearings and you got an alignment issue, you just have to stop and think about what can I do to make this job easier. And yeah, we got some time tied up in making these little brackets that will probably only get used one time ever. But you know, it's going to assure that we have our job lined up properly. It's going to make the whole pour go much easier, I'm convinced. And it's the right thing to do, just take the time to make them. Made out of scrap material, you know, got a couple hours of time into it. But trying to get that shaft lined up any other way was going to really be a challenge. So this was, I think, the right solution and a good way to go about solving this particular problem in the shop. So with that, that is going to be it on this episode. Again, as always, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up and comment button down there if you haven't already. Leaving those comments and leaving that thumbs up really helps out a lot on the channel. And hit that bell icon, and you get notifications when new videos are posted. And with that, guys, we'll catch you on the next video. Again, thanks for watching.